Hello, welcome to Tuesday Live. I am Omini Odan. On the 1st of January 2020, President Muhammadu Buhari sent a New Year letter to Nigerians. Tonight on the program, we shall be looking at President's New Year letter sectoral projections. The letter, which contained achievements, challenges, and itemized programs to consolidate on developmental gains, centered on the issues that include infrastructural development, security, agriculture, solid minerals, trade, border control, fight against corruption, and building on a solid economy. These analysts say speak volumes of an accountable leader that is committed to social contract with the people. 47 road projects are scheduled for completion this year, and in 2021, that includes roads leading to ports. Other projects for the year are the completion of 13 housing estates under the National Housing Project Plan, the commencement of the construction of the AKK gas pipeline, and strengthening security architecture to tackle kidnapping, banditry, and armed robbery. As a pattern of the program, we shall take some reports from parts of the country on expected gains of the projects cutting across sectors in the country. But first, this background report put together by Joshua Ojito.
It is a new dawn and the beginning of another decade, with high expectations among Nigerians as President Muhammadu Buhari raises hope of better days ahead in his New Year letter to Nigerians. Reflecting on gains recorded so far and the opportunity to build on the foundations already laid on security, diversification of the economy, and the sustained fight against corruption, the year 2020, stakeholders say, raises hope and fresh possibilities for a greater Nigeria.
The president has touched on what should interest Nigerians on virtually every aspect of our lives. You talked about the economy, security, the fight against corruption, and several aspects that should be of interest to Nigerians.
We have the assurance that the president of this country really means well for the country. He really has given us the confidence and the hope that it's going to fulfill on his campaign premises, and also the fight against insurgency, the banditry, the free trade zones, and all that. That has given us the assurance and the confidence that maybe before the end of his tenure, we're going to get things
going forward. Maiduguri and Enugu international airports to be fully back on stream to boost air transportation. There is a ray of hope for the power sector in the year 2020 as construction of the Mambila Power Project is set to commence, while government is planning further liberalization of the sector to allow businesses to generate and sell power to Nigerians.
The solution to Nigeria's power sector is gradually being found.
This is in addition to the construction of the AKK gas pipeline, OBS3 gas pipeline, and the expansion of the Escravos-Lagos pipeline in first quarter of 2020. Tagged Nigeria Decade of Prosperity, federal government says 13 housing estates under the National Housing Project Plan will be delivered to Nigerians. The revolution in the agricultural sector, federal government says, will be sustained with the launch of Agricultural Rural Mechanization Scheme, expected to cover 700 local government areas over the next 3 years. There is also the launch of Livestock Development Project Grazing Model in Gombe State, where 200,000 hectares of land has been identified, among other projects, to boost food security. While federal government looks forward to creating new opportunities in agriculture, manufacturing, among other sectors, government assurance of presenting radical program of reform for the oil and gas that will attract investors, improve governance, and strengthen protection for host communities and the environment.
Industry will open up for a lot of things to happen, a lot of activities to unleash. For the oil and gas is to be a linkage to develop other sectors of the economy.
There are also prospects for education, healthcare, and water sanitation as government collaborates with development partners in the implementation implementation of reform programs. The fight against corruption will be given more impetus in the new year, as federal government says enabling environment will be created to promote innovations, enterprise, and hard work to thrive. All these can be achieved in an atmosphere of peace, and so federal government says it will continue to work with state governors, neighboring countries, and international partners to tackle root causes of violent extremism, while security forces will be retrained with modern weaponry to contend kidnapping, banditry, and armed robbery. As the clock ticks in the new year, Nigerians are hopeful of a promising decade where the giant of Africa will rise among Committee of Nations in Abuja. Joshua Ojito, NTA News.
Sectoral projections of Mr. President's New Year letter to Nigerians. That background sets the tone for the takeoff of the program tonight. Well, you can join the conversation tonight to our phone calls when the phone lines are displayed on the set. And when doing this, please turn down the volume of your television set to avoid the echo or the hallback. Also, our Twitter handle at Tuesday Live NTA will be open. Send in your tweets, raise your concerns, and our team of guests will be addressed. Well, tonight, we're set to go. It was a robust letter, and some people have said that this was Mr. President's referral letter to Nigerians. At some point, you'll be following up, where are we with Mr. President's projections for the year? My guests tonight, I have Lieutenant General Lamidi Adeosun, Chief of Policy and Plans, Army Headquarters. Thanks for joining us on Tuesday Live tonight.
Thank you very much. Compliment of season to all Nigerians.
Air Commodore Ibukunle Daramola, Director of Public Relations and Information, Headquarters, Nigerian Air Force. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy New Year to all Nigerians.
Johnson Chukwu, economist and financial expert, is also the Managing Director, Cowrie Asset Management Limited. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be with you.
And from our Lagos Network Center, we have the Managing Director, Nigerian Railway Corporation, in our Lagos Network studios, Fidet Okira. We can see him on the screen there. Good to have you on the program tonight. Right.
The Nigerians, Happy New Year and best of 2020.
Focus tonight, and we take off. As we said, you can be part of the conversation tonight. It's an open forum. Ask your questions, make your contributions, and we'll all crisscross and share our thoughts tonight. Sectoral projections of Mr. President's New Year letter to Nigerians. Gentlemen, let's take it holistically across the board. What is your reaction in appreciation of Mr. President's letter to Nigerians?
Well, for me, in person, is a letter that rekindles the hope of all Nigerians, all well-meaning Nigerians who look into a better future for Nigerian state and Nigerian people. The letter to Nigerians by Mr. President is comprehensive and touch on all facets of governance in all sectors, starting from security down to all the areas that one will expect actions and activities to make for good development, well-being, and safe and secure environment for all Nigerians.
Okay, Ibukule.
Well, as would be expected, Mr. President has again given a clear direction as to where he wants the nation to be, while also highlighting the achievements that have been made over the past 5 years. And I see the letter as something that encompasses all that, you know, most of us as Nigerians, because first and foremost we are Nigerians before we are members of the armed forces, that we all as Nigerians would aspire to. And there are areas within various sectors that it addresses specifics that as the milestones are achieved, it will translate to tangible benefits to Nigeria and Nigerians in terms of the security, where we are going to, infrastructure, where we are going to, and it highlights specifics that I believe Nigerians would hook onto, and I believe it will be beneficial to those in the government and even in the private sector. And so for us in the military, we have been given our marching orders for what has been done so far. is commendable, but then what needs to be done also to ensure the security of Nigerians and Nigerians wherever they may be.
Okay. If you take a critical look at Mr. President's letter to Nigerians, some of the content looks as though it's a huge challenge to the private sector where you belong. What's your impression generally?
Well, I wouldn't think any of them is actually a huge challenge to the private sector. The basic thing is that the president or the government defines the economic environment. The private sector takes it from where the government stops, which is the government defines the policy environment, and the private sector keys into the policy environment to build operating businesses, to create employment. So what the president's speech has done is for the president to have defined his performance target for the year. So what he has done is to reduce his overall strategic plan into annual performance target for 2020. And he was very charitable to be detailed as to specifics. So what has done for the private sector is it makes it easy for us to key into some of those specifics and build our business models in line with the specifics. Take, for instance, when the government said, look, we're going to deliver some 47 roads. We're going to have substantial investment and improvement in the second Niger Bridge. Additional investment will go into Lagos-Ibadan Express. So you can build your business model on assumption that, look, these things will be delivered before the December 2020. So for me, it provides a clear roadmap for the private sector to understand what the society investment environment would be in 2020 and how to build their business model to fit into that model, into that concept.
Okay, to Lagos now, where the MD of the Nigerian Railway Corporation is joining us tonight. As much as we know that your sector is key to Mr. President's letter to Nigerians, without specifically going to the transport sector yet, what's your general impression about Mr. President's letter to Nigerians?
Thank you. First of all, the letter is simple, direct, and no complications. You don't need an interpreter to interpret to Nigerians. That shows the character of the president. You can hold him to the promise made and what is in the letter. There is no need to use the business school language. It was for anybody who can read and write, who understand what he said, and it's clear. And that, I think, is the right way to go to show transparency, no using words or system to hide what is at stake. I believe it's clear enough. The letter is clear enough to everybody, and we take a cue from there, those of us that are working with him and supporting him, to move the government forward and ensure Nigerians benefit from what the government intends to do. Thank you.
Let's go to specifics. And in the course of the program, we shall be going around some centers in the country to bring you sectoral updates tied to Mr. President's letter to Nigerians. We shall be going to a couple of centers: Lagos, Ibadan, Kaduna, Maiduguri, Port Harcourt, name it, Enugu, and Nasarawa State, and indeed Plateau State. Well, quickly, let's go to specifics. And in doing this, I will at times go copiously to Mr. President's letter. Now, one of the strongest comments he made was on security. And let me quote, he said, "Chaos is not a neighbor any of us hope for." And he reaffirmed his position that in May 2015, my first task was to rally our neighbors so that we could confront Boko Haram on a coordinated regional basis. Milestones have been covered. Some appear to say it's not possible. You're here, speak to Nigerians.
Thank you very much. The directive or the statement of Mr. President is as direct as you have read it. Cutting the neighbors in terms of specifics resulted into a rejuvenated multinational joint task force, reorganized, rejuvenated, and even some presidents of neighboring countries that have not visited Nigeria for years were in Nigeria 2015 to 2016 because of the efforts of Mr. President. And that gave birth to that force that has done so well in coordination with all the efforts of individual countries and that of Nigeria specifically, to address the issue of Boko Haram in particular, along and across the borders of Nigeria with Niger, Nigeria with Chad, Nigeria with Cameroon. The effort did not even stop there. Even Benin Republic, there has no boundary with, there has no portion with Lake Chad Basin countries, and Lake Chad Basin Commission also voluntarily offered to join the foray to also provide some measure of support for Multinational Joint Task Force by contributing their own troops and also staff officers at the headquarters of Multinational Joint Task Force. That in itself speaks volume and resulted in deepening the cooperation between Nigeria and all of its neighbors, not only in the side of security, but in all other spheres of activities. So I think the reaching out to neighbors has assisted so well in making sure the cross-border nature of terrorism is actually being addressed. Otherwise, it will have been difficult for Nigeria to solely, despite the fact that from whichever angle we look at it, Nigeria still remains a strong military power within this sub-region or within this region, so to say, even in Africa, despite whatever the challenges may be, which is normal in any circumstance. Even with that, Nigeria wouldn't have been able to do it alone. And it's kudos to Mr. President for the initiative, for the drive, and for the leadership to make sure this was put in place.
Okay, let's come back home. That is from the international perspective now. Back home, still on security. Okay. He says, it has not been easy, but we are winning the war. And beyond this, it made Nigerians know that this whole thing was not just about the federal government. It was a collaboration and a synergy between the federals and the states. Clearly said the federal government will continue to work with state governors, neighboring states, and our international partners to tackle the root causes of violent extremism and the network. But bottom line is, our security forces will receive the best training and modern weaponry, and in turn will be held to the highest standard. Still on security.
Just exactly what Lieutenant General Adeosun said, and a few others have mentioned it, direct and straight to the point. It's not ambiguous. Anybody who hears it knows exactly what Mr. President means by that. He has, of course, talked about how much has been achieved so far. It had not been easy, but we, are winning the war. And, of course, what remains now is also to win the peace, and that is where a multi-stakeholder involvement, multi-state government at all levels, whether it's state, local government, would need to be involved. The NGOs, non-governmental organizations, CSOs will also need to be involved in terms of winning the peace. In that regard, of course, even the armed forces is involved, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Air Force is doing a lot in terms of winning hearts and minds programs, programs aimed at alleviating the plights of those that are affected. There are level 2 hospitals that have been built by the Nigerian Air Force at Bama and Dalori IDP camp. Nigeria MITU is doing a lot in terms of doing things that will cause the hearts and minds of those that are affected to be positively impacted for the benefit of those who are affected in those areas. But more specifically to the aspect of training and modern weaponry. Now, in order to look at where we are going to, we must look at where we are coming from. As at 2015, of course, there was a little bit on ground. But for us as a Nigerian Air Force, within, and that statement is very clear, that Mr. President is specific and very passionate about ensuring the security of Nigeria and Nigerians. And he knows the two critical things that are important, and that is having the right kind of equipment, the right kind of kits, but of course the right kind of capacity in terms of personnel to handle those equipment for maximum effect and efficient employment. And so the equipment, for now, the Nigerian Air Force since 2015, either ordered, paid for, or given to us 47 aircraft since 2015 up till now. There are others that are still going to come. We have already received 17 of them. Another 19 are coming, including the 12 Super Tucano aircraft, 3 JF-17 Thunder, and then 2 additional Agusta 109 from Italy. These are all that have been ordered and will be coming in, within this year or early 2021 to add impetus. Now, this is in terms of equipment. 11 others were also received from other ministries, department of and agencies, and have been added to the Nigerian Air Force inventory. 47 is unprecedented. Even since the late 80s, I'm not sure we've received that number of aircraft within the short space of time. That shows the value that he places and the commitment in terms of providing the modern weaponry. So we expect more to come even in 2020 to deal with all of the threats facing us. In terms of training, with the immense support and enabling environment created by Mr. President, which of course he has said he would continue to do now, the Nigerian Air Force has over 100 pilots have been winged, new pilots that were not trained within the last 5 years have now become pilots. There were issues in the past, but with the support that has come in. So you have pilots that have come in, others are undergoing training such that by the end of 2020, we'll probably have 150 within the last 5 years and a half or so. And other areas, where training has come in, and it's broad in terms of air crew, ground crew, for force projection, for force protection. And so it has been able to ensure that we have the right capacity of personnel to be able to perform effectively and professionally, as Mr. President stated.
Let's speak to the economy. And besides the fact that so much has been done within the diversification plan of government, given the understanding Nigerians have now regarding the economic stimulus initiative of government and the robust plan Mr. President has also said, in specific terms, he said, our new Economic Advisory Council will bring together respected and independent thinkers to advise him on a strategy that champions inclusive and balanced growth and above all fight poverty and safeguard national economic interests.
Well, if you look at the empaneling of the Economic Advisory Council, many of us commended the President for the quality of minds that he selected to populate the Economic Advisory Council. Particularly, these are what you call free market economic thinkers. And it also showed a shift in the President's economic orientation. Previously, it looked like the President preferred a command and control economic order. But with the panel of the Economic Advisory Council, there was a shift in economic orientation to some level of mixed economic thinking or more of a market-oriented economic thinking. And the reality is that the world has moved a lot from the era of command and control economy. Previously, what you had was era where the government had to control the economic tools or the agents of production. Today, the private sector drives that. The government's role is basically to provide the enabling environment and regulation that will encourage private sector investment. And I think the coming into place of that advisory council is clearly beginning to manifest in some of the economic thinkings of the government. We've seen a compression in yield environment where interest rates on fixed income instrument, government instrument, has actually gone to single digit. And therefore, that is stimulating investment and credit creation. Credit creation means banks are lending more. And once banks begin to open their vault to create credits, it creates opportunities for people to go into real sector economic activities. The bane of the economy in the past couple of years was that most people preferred to invest in fixed income instruments that had no productive impact. They were investing more in federal government treasury bills. At some point, federal government treasuries were giving yields of effective yields of close to 20% when the coupon was about 18.9%. But now we're seeing treasury bills at 5%, 3.3%. And what has happened is the lending rate has come down. And people are now in better positions to borrow. and go into productive activities. So ultimately, that will begin to manifest in terms of demand, in terms of creation of economic activities, in terms of GDP growth rate. So if you look at, if we want to ascribe the policies of the monetary authorities, which is to bring down interest rate, to probably the advice, the role of the Economic Advisory Council is kind of subdued in the sense that they don't have executive role. They have to advise the president will accept that advice or modify that advice and pass on to the executive arm, either the Minister of Finance or the Monetary Authority, the central bank governor, in advisory role. So, but if what we're seeing in the economy has to be attributed to the Economic Advisory Council, we would want to believe that we should see a lot more economic growth in 2020 because a couple of things have happened. One, we've eliminated political risk in 2020. In 2019, the first half of the year was dominated by political activities, and therefore economic agents had to sit on the fence to determine the direction of the political environment. Two, we've also seen an expansion in credit availability. We've seen a compression in yield on fixed income instruments, creating opportunities for the real sector to borrow at lower cost. And the impact of this will be that we have seen an improvement in what we call PMI, that is Purchasing Managers Index, which shows that investors are optimistic that the outlook for the economy is more positive than it was the previous month. So all things being equal, we should see a better 2020 in economic terms.
Just in one word, would you say that your contemporaries in the private sector should see this space as an opportunity to grow or a challenge to dwindle?
Well, based on the background I just given,
yes,
the outlook is more positive.
Okay.
I think all things being equal, because in economic terms we always say all things being equal, in the absence of any disruption, we should see a stronger GDP growth rate. We should see higher level of investment, local investment. We should see higher level of job creation, because once private sector is borrowing and investing in the real sector, they will create jobs. And the creation of jobs will lead to an improvement in demand, which will lead to further demand for input. So the chain that triggers economic growth seem to have been set in. Granted, the method that the central bank used to bring down interest rate is what they call unconventional method, but it has positive impact.
Okay. Let's take a listen to the MD of the Nigerian Railway Corporation. The rail sector is key to Mr. President's letter to Nigerians. Without being specific, can you give us an update where we are and the mileage you anticipate to achieve within 2020?
Thank you. We thank God that people are not talking about rail, or like, let's say in past 6 or 4 years ago, where nobody was talking about rail. I think the major news in Nigeria today is about rail. It's because of the interest and the capacity and the interest of the present government to develop infrastructure, which raise a cardinal to make the logistics of Nigeria economy. As I tell people, if there is no good means of moving your product, it will discourage the industry to grow, because you have to move your product from the center of production to the people who can buy it. So, and the easiest way to do that is rail. And rail cannot do it alone. You have to have the road and air to meet up with a complete system, because in the economy, it's a multiplying effect. It's not additional multiplication. If the rail is working well and power is not working well, if power is 0 and rail is 100%, I think the economy will not grow. So I don't believe that we should just put emphasis on rail, but I think the government is also doing something to ensure that the other part of factor of production are put into place, like power. The president emphasized power, he emphasized rail, he emphasized roads. Because without these 3 elements in the economy, the nation cannot move forward. So as far as we are concerned in the rail industry, we thank God it's happening, We have seen every day either good or bad news come on rail. But we pray that our press brothers should reduce and emphasize the negative aspects. Like what the news that came out last time that a ballistic missile was used and attacked the rail from Kaduna to Abuja, which was never correct. But people went on air and air it. We should not. We should encourage the government to do more instead of using negative publicity to bring it back. The rail between Kaduna and Abuja is working, but we hope in April we are expecting some coaches in January, a set of DMUs, which is a new thing that will be on that line, 2 sets. One will be for Lagos, Ibadan, and one will be for Abuja, Kaduna. We have started trial runs on Lagos, Ibadan from a place called Iju to Ibadan. That's just one trip daily and with 2 coaches. But when the set of DMU come, that is made up of 6 coaches of different classes, 8 coaches of different classes with 3 motive powers. There are 2 sets. As I said earlier, one will be sent to Kaduna, Abuja, and that will reduce the pressure on that route. And we will deploy one to Ibadan, Lagos. I know distant future, we are expecting 44 coaches that will be deployed to Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja, Kaduna, and Itakpe, Warri. If you still remember that, there was a standard gauge that was started over 34 years ago. And we are happy to announce that the rail aspect has been concluded, and the station building, the last time I spoke with the contractor, so by the end of February, those stations will be ready. That's 12 stations between Warri and Itakpe. We're also hoping that the contract that has been given on PPP basis between linking Itakpe to Abuja will key in within the year 2020. While the approval that has been given to SOX for Fund to link Warri to Port Harcourt and Port Harcourt to Benin and back to Agbo, then to Oka and to Ebonyi will also come in. And while the Port Harcourt, that is on Eastern Axis, we are working to ensure that commencement of operation on the narrow gauge. We are also looking for funds to ensure the standard gauge, the construction will come in. If it are not coming in, at least we will start make effort to get the resources to modernize the Eastern Axis. The contract that was awarded in 2006, that is the Lagos-Kano, which has been segmented, which we have the Abuja, Kaduna, Lagos, Ibadan. We are hoping that from the first or second quarter of 2020, this year, the Ibadan Kano construction will come in because approval has been given, and the government went as far as providing the counterpart funding. We are just waiting for our partners from the Chinese Exim Bank to meet up with their own aspects so that construction can commence immediately. You remember that the wagon assembly plant, the ground was overtaken by the Vice President late last year, and we expect commencement of the wagons we ordered. Some of them will be produced completely from China, or at least 60% will be done in Nigeria from that plant, so that we can now start to train our people, the engineers and the economists, to know how to plan and produce rolling stock. And you also remember that in Daura, in order to enhance capacity, the University for Transportation, not just for rail, is expected to start within this year. Some Nigerians have been sent abroad to study transportation, not just the economy, but the engineering. About 150 of them that just did well in sciences in secondary school to study up to PhD level, so that we have, by the time they finish, those of them that can continue to up to PhD level will become the staff of that university and train our people. The time we order the rolling stock, that is the locomotive and wagons, there's an agreement that our engineers in railway and the ministry will go to China and understudy the production. As we speak, 22 engineers and technicians have been to China to witness that, and they are back. And what we have planned now is that they will start training those who did not have the opportunity to go to China to understudy the manufacturers. We hope that with the present standard, and if we continue like this, the rail industry will grow. And we are open to private sector to come in. And we know that it's not easy to make the rail infrastructure. It's not what you do today and get the money tomorrow. You have to wait a longer time. But there are other things they can do in supporting. We are planning that we get to a stage where people can bring in their rolling stock, and with good signaling and communication in place, we can will be to control the train, position them, that various operations like you have abroad can be operated with different operators running on the track. But the track has to be solid, and the signaling and security on the track have to be ensured so that the investors will have that confidence to invest on it. And there are other services that can be provided by private sector to support the rail operation. As we go along, I think these things will be discussed further. And in the 2020, there are a lot of, I think, what I call it doors or gates open to private sector to come into the rail industry. They should not be scared. The Act is being amended. There is a provision, or even in the Act, that gives room for franchising. And once an MOU is entered with the private sector, I don't think government will, and the agreement signed, I think it's binding. Thank you.
You can join the conversation via our Twitter handle at TuesdayLiveNTA, and our phone lines are open. But for now, we told you in analyzing Mr. President's New Year letter sectorally in Nigeria, we shall be going round Nigeria. Let's take the first set of reports focused on infrastructural development and the economy. And those reports will be coming from Lagos and Ibadan.
Lagos, the commercial knife of Nigeria, has in the past few years been faced with a myriad of infrastructure decay, thereby slowing down movement of goods from the ports to their destinations. The state, as an international border outpost, also serves as transit route for smuggling of illegal products into the country. But the recent massive intervention on road, rail and waterways transformation through repair works and building of new ones when the need arises is aimed at overcoming the issue of transportation challenges.
At the completion of this major edifice, not only will we see a major traffic gridlock improvement, we will also see real value, real estate value coming back to the entire neighborhood here.
Everything will be raised up to 500 millimeters.
While the federal government's closure of the nation's land borders has helped to reduce drastically smuggling of illegal items.
Throughout our collective efforts and efficient strategies put in place, the area command was able to collect a total sum of 413 billion 732 million 818,554 naira 19 kobo.
It is expected that the various infrastructural investment will help to enhance the ease of doing business in Nigeria, which will assist investors to increase their confidence in investment. The visa on arrival policy is also expected to enhance investment in Lagos State, as it will help to build confidence in their hope of investment, coupled with the present administration's commitment to eradicating corruption in the country. When all the bottlenecks bedeviling investment in the state are taken care of in the new year, the past glory of the state will be reenacted. In Lagos, Tunde Saiki, NTA News.
We'll take another angle from Ibadan.
Of the current administration to bequeath to the nation solid infrastructural base which will change the narrative in public space and address deficits hampering the nation's development. Work is ongoing in different parts of Southwest. Besides the multi-billion naira reconstruction of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, a major carriage that connects other parts of the country to its economic nerve center.
The present government, they are trying their best in order to put the roads in good shape.
So presently, they are doing their best.
Hope is inside to end the nightmare along Oyo-Ogbomoso Road, being a critical corridor in the country, with renewed commitment of the federal government to complete the missing portion of Ibadan-Ilorin Expressway, initiated almost 2 decades ago.
This road has been there since Obasanjo's regime, the old one. And we are happy now that we will enjoy it.
They were not trying because this road, I didn't believe that they can do work on this road again. Well, we thank God.
At Olorisha Oko, a suburb of Ibadan, a grassroots road project capable of turning around the economic experience of Nigerians with a dry inland port has reached an advanced stage. Concerned stakeholders are optimistic that the initiative will make a big economic impact.
If you have an investment of 100 million USD that the inland port is going to go, we're talking about like 36 billion naira investment in Oyo State. So definitely, automatically, it's an expanded economy for us.
Given the fact that we want to diversify the Nigerian economy, and if you take a look at the agricultural sector, we have always been recording a lot of farm gate losses, such that most of those perishable goods do not get transported out immediately. So this is one of the opportunities that is going to give the agricultural sector in Oyo State. Goods can be quickly packaged and then taken out of, exported out of the country.
I want to tell you that most of our graduates, we have a job benefits.
Strong infrastructural base is no doubt a bedrock of economic development all over the world. It does mean that when this dry port eventually becomes operational, the economy of residents of Ibadan and of course Nigerians as a whole would have received a boost. In Ibadan, Dayo Munshola, NTA News.
You say pictures don't tell lies. Sectoral projections, Mr. President's letter to Nigerians. Where are we looking at infrastructure? You heard the MD of the Railway Corporation talk so much about infrastructure and said that the challenge now is that it looks as though only the government is doing it. So many windows of opportunity are there for the private sector. And even in Mr. President's letter, I told you I'll be going there copiously. He said, these projects are not small and do not come without some temporary disruptions. We are doing now what should have been done a long time ago. I thank Nigerians for your patience and look forward to the dividends that we and future generations will long enjoy. So, looking at infrastructure, would you say that it's encouraging for the private sector to participate fully?
What I would say as it relates to infrastructure is that today, the federal government or the governments at different levels dominate infrastructure provision. We have not properly defined the legal and commercial framework that will invite private sector to invest in infrastructure. There is a concept currently being tried by the government where private sector operators are allowed or encouraged to build infrastructure and recover the investment through tax holidays or tax waivers, in the sense that the tax liabilities are used to defray the amount they have invested in those infrastructure. That model is still on trial. I mean, we've seen the Apapa-Owoloshoki Expressway that's being reconstructed. We have some roads in Apapa that are being reconstructed by Dangote and Flour Mills, where they are supposed to recover their investment through tax deductions. But I think the government has to go beyond that. And for you to have a framework that would allow private sector to invest in commercially viable infrastructure corridors. Today, the government does not have the financial resources to build infrastructure at the far rate that Nigeria needs to develop. And that's where the problem is. In as much as government intention is to build infrastructure, but they do not have the resources. We do not have the economic resources to build infrastructure at the pace that we need. If you look at, for instance, the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, the construction has taken donkey years. I mean, it started under Obasanjo's government. So, in effect, has almost lasted 20 years to build Lagos-Ibadan Express. It's just a 131 corridor.
Just a second before we lose this call. Our first caller tonight is coming from Kano, Ismail. Hello, Ismail.
Okay, sir. Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Go ahead, we can hear you. You're welcome.
Okay. I would just like to recommend the effort of the federal government on the good job on the good project that is going on nationwide. We have started to see the changes we voted for. I would just like to use this opportunity to call all Nigerians to exercise patience. Nigeria will be better, inshallah. Finally, I will also call the attention of the federal government, please, to make the policy that will be beneficial to the poor Nigerians in terms of human development that will make direct impact to the poor Nigerians. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ismail. Thank you, Ismail. Thank you so much.
Okay, so back to what I was saying. The basic thing is this. If you look at government revenue, for instance, in 2018, total federal government revenue was 3.86 trillion naira. Government spent 5.85 trillion on recorded expenditure and debt service. So if you add the capital expenditure, the government had a deficit of about 3.6 trillion naira in 2018. At the first, by the end of September this last year, the government total revenue was just about 4.2 trillion naira. That shows you a huge gap between the projections and the actual revenue. So what has happened is that because you have what you call discretionary expenses and you have non-discretionary expenses, payment of salaries, maintaining the military men on duty are non-discretionary. The government has to bear those costs. So what is now left is what will be spent on infrastructure. So the challenge you have is that because you don't have that revenue stream, the government needs to evolve a new concept to build infrastructure. There are some commercially viable corridors. Take, for instance, Lagos-Ibadan Express Road. Private sector can build that highway, toll it for 20 years or 30 years, recover their money. The Nigerian economy will still enjoy the benefit of that infrastructure to the extent that it will enable economic activity around that corridor. Look at the issue of rail lines. We have a rail master plan. You have the Lagos-Calabar Eastern Corridor. You have the Lagos-Ibadan, Abuja-Kano rail line. Those corridors will take donkey years to build if we have to build them for budgetary allocation. So I think we can come up with a PPP model that will provide opportunity for private sector to invest in those infrastructure. Remember that at some point we said telecommunication is the exclusive duty of the federal government and only NITEL provided telecom services. We liberalized that, brought in private capital into it, and today we've seen the cost of use of telecommunication services crash to the barest minimum. Last week, one of the telecom operators went to my village and was distributing free SIM card to the village people and also giving them 100 naira to collect a free SIM card because they need to convert customers. So if we can apply the same concept in a lot of the infrastructure the government is trying to fund, in as much as the government is trying to fund infrastructure, but we must recognize our constraints. One of the basic things which I'm happy I'm discussing with generals here is that the basic thing about strategy, you have to look at your SWOT, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunity, and your threats. What are our weaknesses?
Let me hold you again. Our second caller is calling from Mina, Niger State. Oye. Hello, Oye.
Hello.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Go ahead, we can hear you.
Happy New Year to the panelists.
Same to you.
One thing I want to start by honestly commending the effort of the President on the previous policy he has implemented. Let me start with security. Honestly, the security they have done enough. But the unfortunate thing is Nigeria that we are very weak in appreciating the effort of our security officers. It is those who are the country of visiting the Northeast that we really appreciate the effort of the military. But you see, I will not want the military to be discouraged by the negative comment of some of the Nigerians. They should just remain focused. And I also advise that, you see, this is not a conventional war. So there is need to carry along the locals, that is just like the one the OPC are trying to organize in the Southeastern. I will advise that in Northeast, the military should try to involve more of the hunters and the locals who know the terrain. They have the perfect knowledge of the terrain. So if there is a synergy between the security operatives and the locals, I think the war will be a bit easier. Then on economy, I also advise that at least our borders should remain closed so that we should be able to produce what we eat. By the time the border remains closed, we will be forced to encourage our local farmers to, and of course, boost our production. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oye. When we return, we'll react to Oye's contribution on Tuesday Live tonight. We'll take another line of reports from Kaduna, Zamfara, and hopefully Maiduguri. And these reports are centered on security. And when we take those reports, when we return back, we'll center on security. Let's take a listen to the first one, Kaduna and Zamfara.
Population of about 7 million people, Kaduna State is among the states that experienced serious security challenges in the outgoing year 2019. These have prompted the deployment of various military operations and introduction of new ones as part of broad-based countermeasures to bring peace and order in the state. Such operations included Operation Pop Ada, Operation Safe Haven, Operation Harbin Kunama, and Operation Dremikia, among others. The State Police Command had in the year 2019 received a total of 1,420 complaints from the public and effected arrest of 2,067 suspects of various crimes. A total of 1,904 suspects were charged to court and 474 of them were convicted.
We've reduced the cases of banditry, kidnapping and other social vices in the society drastically to a management level. And we promise to continue to do more.
We were able to charge about 26 cases to court last year, out of which 2 have been convicted.
A reasonable success have been attained. What needs to be done is for members of the larger society to give all the necessary support they ought to give to the security agencies.
Experts are of the belief that the reduction in crime rate in most of the flashpoints is due largely to support given the security agencies by the Buhari administration.
The manifestation of the return of relative peace in Zamfara State is largely seen in the area of economic activities as local markets have fully resumed operation across the state. Social interaction between the Fulani and the Hausa communities has also been revived as various tribes in the state also celebrate the return of peace. Disarmament of the repentant bandits and the members of the outlawed vigilante and the continuous dialogue amongst them, as well as the construction of Ruga, are some of the measures put in place aimed at ensuring that the peace accord stands the test of time.
Bandits have released a lot of weapons, including general purpose machine gun. The militia groups, they have released over 500 weapons.
With the apparent synergy among all the security agencies and the Zamfara state government in the peace-building process, it is the expectation of people in the state that the feat so far achieved will be consolidated in the year 2020.
We'll take yet another report focused on security from Maiduguri.
Is one vital phenomenon that guarantees victory, freedom and safety of oneself, giving room for comfortable living. Millions of people displaced as a result of insurgency could not boast of much comfort, but life is peaceful and what they are now saying is the worst is over.
Thanks to President Muhammadu Buhari, when he came into power, he immediately appointed new service chiefs who are very much committed to the nation's security, who have contributed their quota immensely towards ensuring peace has finally returned to the entire northeastern part of the country and Borno State in particular. All the territories that under the occupation of the terrorists are all liberated by our Nigerian military.
Here in Borno State, one can take 2 to 3 months without hearing explosions from one place to another. And we have to thank this man.
We sleep with one eye, but with the coming of Buhari, we are sleeping with 2 eyes. For the simple reason, out of the 20 local government in Borno State were under the control of the insurgents. But later, with the coming of Buhari, all are now under the control of the Nigerian army.
In 2013, he knew how the city of Maiduguri was. Nobody dared to go to the mosque in Maiduguri city. Nobody dared to go to market in Maiduguri city. Today, Maiduguri city is a safe haven. It is the same heaven for all those who are distressed.
There's yet another report from Port Harcourt, Rivers State.
Of kidnapping, piracy, armed robbery, as well as cultism and vandalism of national assets used to be of public concern in Rivers State. However, the narrative changed in 2019 with the formation of the Joint Security Outfit, codenamed Operation Sting, and the huge investment in security facilities by the state government. Although there are still pockets of security infractions, particularly in the waterways, residents are urging the state government to take advantage of the federal government's partnership to end the tide of insecurity in the waterways.
The security challenge in Rivers is very calm, very okay. Everybody enjoyed the Xmas, slept. In fact, I slept with 2 eyes closed, unlike before.
But the state should partner with the federal government and ensure that there is adequate security for the citizenry.
It is also heartwarming to note that the Rivers State Police Command is working in tandem with the federal government in instilling discipline and respect for human rights by its officers and men, even as it keeps tab on the security flashpoints, such as the Emoa East-West Road, Elele Owerri, and Ogoni Akwa Ibom roads.
We've been dealing with our own as we speak. We have about 6 of them who have been recommended for dismissal. Who were found guilty of engaging in corrupt activities and extortion, as the case may be. So I can assure you that this 2020, we see a redefined and a refined police officers on the road.
The command solicits continuous community partnership for intelligence sharing in 2020. In Port Harcourt, Robinson Deratede, NTA News.
Our focus once again is sectoral projections tied to Mr. President's New Year letter to Nigerians. You can be part of the conversation through your phone calls, through our numbers on the screen, and also to our Twitter handle @TuesdayLiveNTA. We'll take a short break and be right back. When we return, we'll react to the reports from Maiduguri, Zamfara, Kaduna, and Port Harcourt. Don't go away.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online. Or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying tuned. The reports you heard from Kaduna, Zamfara, Maiduguri, and Port Harcourt were not imaginary. Our reach takes us there and we bring you as it is. Those were Nigerians reacting and giving updates. We heard stories of we were sleeping 1 eye closed, now we have 2 eyes closed. We heard testimonies on what has been happening, and some of these things have been said in Mr. President's letter to Nigerians in a reassuring perspective. So can we get an update?
Thank you very much.
Mostly in the angle of going further in terms of deploying science technology in whatever you're doing?
Thank you very much. As it has been clearly stated, and as Nigerians all have watched the clips from various parts of the country, it attests and confirms Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces' position that yes, we are winning. Though it's not easy, we are truly winning. And from what Mr. President has done so far and is still doing, we are really getting better. One, remember my colleague had talked about training, specifically from the Air Force. But if I had to talk about training in the Army, to ensure that capacity is built to be able to meet the current trend, both in developing technology of our own, local technology. Recently, Mr. President himself commissioned a Zugu MRAP that is everything Nigerian, manufactured without any foreign technical hands from inception to completion. So many other inventions that are now being introduced and perfected to make sure we don't only rely on importing technology. We are also developing our own, especially along the military line, to make sure we reduce the dependence and the high cost of borrowed or acquired technology from military technology from outside. So adaptive technology is going on in the armed forces and also particularly in the army, as we saw recently. Also, to further buttress the statement of Mr. President, a lot of acquisition is ongoing on government-to-government basis. We knew how difficult it had been for Nigeria to get equipment from outside. But Mr. President and his government has also evolved peaceful and understanding means, a diplomatic means of reaching out and getting what we need, at least to a certain extent. Though they don't come easy because of period of gestation and so many other conditions that have to be met before production. They say they are not off the shelf issues. So technologically, we are moving forward, both locally and also acquiring new and more sophisticated equipment. This might not be the forum to say some of these things in detail, but I can reassure all of us that the government is doing the needful, not only to talk about technology, but to acquire the required technology and standards, both from within and outside. Mr. President personally is supporting all the research and development efforts of the Nigerian Army and Armed Forces in general to make sure we break out from the yoke of having to depend on everything from outside before we can do what we need to do to keep Nigeria safe, to maintain the territorial integrity of Nigeria, and to provide that enabling, secured environment for Nigerians, including non-Nigerians that are law-abiding and living within the Nigerian territorial space, to be able to go about their lawful business without let or hindrance. For Nigerians, after working hard for the day, to be able to sleep with their eyes closed, knowing that they are feeling secured and they are truly secured.
Okay. One other thing that has been misconstrued is the issue of border closure. Why I say this, I want to link it up. It has both economic and security implications. And before I take the tweets tied to Mr. President's speech, letter, I beg your pardon, let me take this line. He said, the joint land border security exercise currently taking place is meant to safeguard Nigeria's economy and security. No one can doubt that we have been good neighbors and good citizens. We have been the helpers and shock absorbers of the sub-region, but we cannot allow our well-planned economic regeneration plans to be sabotaged. Quickly, a couple of tweets are here. reacting to the border closure. I'll take them up, and I believe our guest from Lagos also listening. Then Daramola, you react, and Okira from Lagos will react to them. First is from Giwa. What are the measures in place to control hike in price of goods as a result of border closure? Although the border closure will help give a facelift to local productions, however, many marketers are observed to be extorting buyers and consumers. 2, Ismail Sani. I think it is important to strengthen our institutions to ensure our production can meet the demand before border closure. This closure has brought about price hike in household commodities. Ikechuku says, I was not in accordance with the border closure, but regards to our farm produce and other local productions, I think it will enhance our local products, but I will suggest government should start thinking about price control so as to help monitor our markets. Thanks. Tosim ICT. The government should have taken time to build institutions to meet the demand before closing border. The closure has brought about hike in price of common household food items. Let's take a security perspective before I go to him.
Okay. Well, again, as always, security and development are two sides. Indeed, scholars have said security is development and development is security. And you cannot, they are not mutually exclusive. They are more or less, as I said, two sides of the same coin. And so if we must have development, there must be security. And if there is development, it will ensure that there is security for those within that space. The closure of the border was brought about by a number of issues, economic in one sense, and then of course security, because of the inflow of certain items that were not in the interest of national security. So it's serving two purposes now, but of course the economic effects are what the Nigerians are feeling. But it's a case from the tweets that have been mentioned now. It's a case of, is it the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken? Because either of those arguments could work in the sense that they want certain infrastructure or certain items to be in place before the border is closed. But at the same time, there are several nations of the world, developing nations like us, who have closed the economy in order to ensure that they develop and produce locally. And so in order to ensure that we are secure and are able to develop our own productive capacity in certain areas, I believe this is the way to go. In terms of security, there is no nation in the world that is able to be very effective in terms of military infrastructure. Of course, you can never do it alone, but if you are wholly dependent on other nations, you will definitely have problems. And that is why the presidential directive, order number 5, about looking inwards, localizing, backward reverse engineering, looking into what we can do by ourselves, which is what the armed forces, as mentioned by General Deoshun, and then the Nigerian Air Force has been doing. There are certain spares, aircraft rotables and other things that would depend for huge foreign exchange to get from outside. But because of the directive, we have over the past 5 years looked inwards, and we have been able to get hydraulic diaphragm for the L39ZA, for the Mi-35M. We have been able to, fix our own brake system in working with...
Just a second. Let's take this caller from Benin Kabi. Umar. Hello, Umar. You're welcome to Tuesday Live.
Yes. My name is Umar Anate, calling from Benin Kabi.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You see, I must start by recommending the federal government for the effort, more especially on the security. It's quite commendable. We appreciate Mr. President and the Commander-in-Chief. He's really a Commander-in-Chief. And about the border closure, we have seen the benefit of it. We have seen the benefit of border closure. But there are some issues really about that border closure. the border is partially closed to the extent that some of the security apparatus, the border closure is not closely, totally closed to them. And I think there are some extortion there. We are at the border community. Honestly, most of the things that happen before border closure, it happens even after the closure of the border. Some part of the country, more especially the north, like Jibia border and other border, Kamba border, all the other things that used to happen, they happen. The only thing is that the security men there, honestly, they are not performing their duty diligently. You see a kind of extortion, a kind of even rice. We have imported rice. Quite okay, we have imported rice, and it comes through these borders. Yes, some security men or some custom officers, what they will do is they will close their eyes as if they do not even see the people that are passing, so that they will come with their everything. They will come with their everything. I think it is better the federal government should put eye on those securities. Yes. May God continue to bless our country.
Okay, quickly, maybe you just react to Umar's allegation. But for rice, I know the customs store here may not be able to say that, but he made a sweeping allegation on security.
Well,
before I go to
I would not know where he has gotten his own information from, but I know that
he's calling it from Birnin Kebbi.
It's from Birnin Kebbi. So it may be an isolated incident or at a particular location, which I believe will be taken up by the Excise Swift Response that is handling the matter. I believe it will be taken up. But in general, the closure of the border has been a total one that affects all of the known land borders across the country. So to ensure that what is not supposed to come in, that is coming in illegally, is stopped. And indeed, the important aspect is that the benefits of the border closure far outweigh the demerits of it. While there are which I believe over time the developmental experts and economists will look at it. But I believe that the benefits in terms of enhancing local production, helping the agricultural sector, and how it has helped those who are already in the agro-allied sector already within this short period of time. It's translating into tangible benefits for them. So I believe that going into 2020, especially depending on whether the requirements put forward are met by our neighbors.
Okay. Quickly, I know we have taken a long way to come to you. The issues of price control, the issues of border closure. So we have to, before we go to Lagos and speak with the MD of Nigeria Railway Corporation.
Okay, the issue of price control is a non-issue because nobody is contemplating the price control in 2020. I mean, this is a new generation entirely. Nobody talks about price control as it relates to economic management today or price management. But the fundamental issue about the border closure, which is actually for me is the substance of the issue, is that I felt that the government should have been more systematic in restricting importation to the land borders. I think the approach we adopted was ad hoc, kind of an emergency policy that should ordinarily have been very short-timed. But it has stretched beyond the ad hoc nature of that policy. If it was a security issue, which is what I think it should have been, it would have been you close the border, you address the security issue. But the fundamental about border control is that basic things have to be in place. One, if you want to restrict importation through a land border, you must also have economic policies that will stimulate production of those goods and services that you are restricting their importation. You don't just close the border and not create the enabling environment to build those things you don't have. And I want to take us through an experience we've had as a country. Around 2000 or 2001, then President Olusegun Obasanjo came up with a cement industrial policy. And that policy required that importation of bag cement was going to be restricted. And they specified a timeline for it. And they asked anybody who wanted to go into cement marketing to start the process of building a cement factory. And once you start the building of a cement factory, they will give you a license to bring in bulk cement. And they gave a timeline, I think about 10 years, within which time anybody who was building a cement factory must have completed it. And after that 10 years, the government stopped the issuance of license for importation of bulk cement. Over time, within that time frame, Nigerian companies and Nigerian investors built their capacity. At some point, we were only producing 2 million metric tons of cement nationally. Today, there's no cement factory that is producing less than 2 million metric tons. But it was a systematic plan, and there was no disruption. Now, if you close the border and you say, you won't bring in rice today. Today is the 7th day of January, and shut down the border. You are not likely going to immediately ratchet up production of rice. It will take 6 months for you to plant and harvest the rice. So what you do is you create artificial scarcity. And then what happens is the price will shoot up. Those who have stock of rice will benefit from it. The majority of citizens who do not have stock of rice piled up will suffer it. So I think the government should be more systematic about issues of economic policy management. The ad hoc approach does not address the fundamental issue. And that thing we need to also look at. The issue of border closure was because of what we call failures of the bureaucracy. I'm happy that the guy who called it from Brinkebi mentioned that. The first thing is that the land borders are manned by security agencies. And nothing is flown through the air to come in and land. So how do the rice and other things we are trying to ban from coming in come in? Some people man those things. So why don't we adopt the necessary technology that will make it possible? Today, technology can actually make it possible for you to sit here in Abuja and monitor all our land borders and see what is crossing there and track them. So if the personnel can do it, adopt technology to do it. Okay. I think we have not addressed the fundamental issues. The issue of weaknesses in the security apparatus, particularly the Nigerian customs, that has the responsibility to man the land borders. We need to address that. We need to address, have we built the necessary support system that will ensure that we produce those items that used to come from through the land border, so that we have a compensation in terms of production of those goods and services.
Okay, let me just hold you there. We'll come back. Right now, like we said, Tuesday Live is an audience participation program. It's our program, it's Nigeria's program, everybody's program. Some Nigerians also had their thoughts on this through a vox pop, and the focus once again is sectoral projections on Mr. President's letter to Nigerians. Let's take a listen.
Has come in and has put decorum in the society. Corruption has gone to its lowest ebb. We are beginning to see the real Nigerians. We are beginning to see the way Nigeria should have been since the reintroduction of democracy. If somebody like Buhari has started this from then and by now, would have been living in reality. The president is actually doing a good job and he needs all our support.
The aspect of insurgency, it didn't start in a day. It's something that it started more or less like a gradual stuff from the grassroots. I just want to urge us, as our own, from our own perspective, to try as much as possible to give information where necessary. I want him to focus more on the security aspect, because that is just a major, the key thing we're having issues with.
You know, I really appreciate Mr. President for focusing on the fight against corruption. As we all know, corruption does not add, rather it takes away from the economy. Once there is corruption, faith in the leadership is shaken, And that is why, since the inception of democracy in Nigeria in 1999, the enigma of corruption has led this country to many infrastructural deficiencies. So I commended Mr. President on that, on fighting against corruption.
He touched on a good number of things: infrastructure, security, and the need for us to really gear up and show our support for him. Really is quite appreciated. And infrastructure-wise, we can see we're making a quantum leap. It's not something we can do in a day, but then so long as we have manage our resources resourcefully and usefully, we can get there.
Those were Nigerians reacting to the issue tonight, which is on sectoral projections of Mr. President's letter to Nigerians for the new year. We'll be going to Lagos. There are a couple of tweets here for reaction by the MD of the Nigeria Railway Corporation. But before then, let's go to take some reports from Aba and Enugu.
Yes, after the windfall, the fall in oil price has immensely affected the country's economy, thereby necessitating the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration policy of diversifying the economy, which involves using the right strategy to boost revenue generation from other sectors of the economy, such as agriculture, solid minerals, the textile and leather industry, among others. Aba, being the hub of textile and leather business in Nigeria, has embraced this policy to create jobs for its teeming youths.
Diversification of economy has a huge impact in Aba as a commercial hub of Abia State. Here we see people go into different skills, acquire different skills as an entrepreneur and be independent.
Item, we started up something for ourselves. Maybe after learning this thing, and by God's grace, I'm learning very well. I can start up my own.
With the incredible human and natural resources that are abound in Nigeria beyond oil, people are of the view that the federal government has set the country on the path of economic stability and growth through its diversification policy. They, however, revealed that the policy is being constrained by limited access to funds and connective infrastructure.
We need to have an industrial village in Aba where all these artisans, fabricators should be camped and then produce what ordinarily we should have imported. Aba is Japan of Africa.
Nigerians are advised to alter their taste for foreign goods and complement the government's efforts in diversifying the economy.
The importance of solid minerals development to the economy of Nigeria cannot be overemphasized, and Nigeria has significant solid minerals such as coal, iron ore, gold, uranium, etc. As a result of the discovery of coal in Enugu in 1907, as well as the increased mining activities in the state, a railway system was constructed linking Enugu coal mine fields and seaports in Port Harcourt for the evacuation of coal, which attracted foreign businesses into Enugu. The coal mines in Enugu produced about 670,000 tons of coal annually and were major sources of energy, generating electricity to the entire southeast. Aware of the importance of coal to the economy of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration recently revamped the railway in Enugu and promised that Nigerians would see significant improvement in electricity service supply.
The groundnut pyramids in Kano and the cocoa. It was coal that was used to transport all those things to the port so that they can be exported. And coal was very, very vital in the Nigerian economy.
Also in his New Year message, President Muhammadu Buhari had named the rehabilitation and inauguration of the Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, as well as completion of the second Niger Bridge, as some projects Nigerians should expect this year 2020. True to his words, work is aggressively going on at the bridge and at the airport, as confirmed by the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, who recently inspected the airport. When completed, it would boost the economy and impact positively on business operations in the country.
And we're satisfied that the contractor is capable and competent enough to deliver this procurement. By our program of work, we would be delivering this runway, God willing, before Easter.
The work is going on well. I want to thank His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, for coming to our rescue.
The present administration of Muhammadu Buhari, I will really say yes, they are doing well.
That report came from Aba and Enugu. Quickly, let's take these two reports back to back from Lafia and Jos.
key of prosperity as President Muhammadu Buhari raises hope for better days in his New Year letter to Nigerians. The state is known as the home of solid minerals to underscore its vision of driving the economy. The new focus by the federal government of diversification is good omen for the state, as opening up opportunities for foreign investors to participate is key.
Nasarawa is a summary of geology of Nigeria, where you have the igneous rocks here, the metamorphic rocks, and the sedimentary rocks. And each of these rocks hosts one or two minerals. You can start from the lead zinc in Nasarawa, Igon, the tin ore in Mada Station, the salt in Awi-Kiana, the lead zinc in Awi-Kiana, limestone, barite in the Kiana axis as well.
We are of the opinion that we actually need to have a license to take up the mining sector. If we do that, it means that we can bring investors who can actually help us in doing that properly. That will improve our IGR.
Governor Abdullahi Sule, in partnership with relevant agencies, is sustaining engagements.
Our administration is committed to create conducive environment for investors to harness these minerals' potentials.
In Plateau State, there is the need for strong and deliberate involvement in other economic activities for growth and development of the nation.
If we diversify, for example, we were able to mine, let's say, zinc or tin in commercial quantity. You will agree with me that, number one, is going to create employment, and youth restiveness is going to reduce.
The beautiful sceneries, the beautiful hills and valleys, and the beautiful sites that we have, rocks and valleys, places tourism at an advantage on Plateau.
Now, done with that, we have a couple of tweets. The first two tweets I have not taken, they are tailored at the MD of Nigeria Railway Corporation. And quickly, we have kept you silent for some time. The first came from PM Adewale. He says, compliments of the season. Question goes to the DG Rails. About 2 weeks ago, during the festivities, there was a report, an allegation in the news about ticketing at Abuja station. What's your take on that, sir? Ndagi Yusuf says, as optimistic as the new year letter may be, the degree of success may depend on the high level of energy and commitment of specific sectors. For instance, while the federal government is pursuing the rail and federal road infrastructure network, rural urban infrastructure development is low.
Thank you, and Adewale. You talk about the ticket issue. I think among the good news that is coming within the year that the era of just hard ticketing will be over. In no short distant time, we have the e-ticketing, and the infrastructure to put in place to make the e-ticketing successful will also be there. You have to be patient with us, because you don't just, e-ticketing is the easiest thing to do, but the infrastructure to ensure that it's successful, like gated entrance and exit, to ensure that the e-ticketing you are using is genuine and properly accounted for, require physical infrastructure that have to go with it. And to do that, we have to go through the necessary due processes so that we can get it right. Hopefully, in this first quarter, I think the issue of e-ticketing will come to rest. And all other infrastructure accompanying it will also come to play. By that, I mean those who have the ticket can have access to the platform and board the train. And e-ticketing will not stop physical sales of tickets, just as well with the airlines. People can decide to come to the station and buy their ticketing. And to ensure that the ticket racketeering people are complaining about is stopped. We thank the EFCC, the DSS, that have taken full, provided full support, that by at least being at the station and doing their work and ensure that that aspect of corruption is nippled about. We are working with them to ensure that problem will stop. You see, you talk about the journey has to start, and it has started. The federal government have started, and by providing the national rail, and we are encouraging the state. We have a lot of input from the state, seeking our partnership and seeking our support to guide them so that they can come in. We have Kaduna, we have Kano, I think we have Ibadan, and Lagos have started. And at the time, I think Abia and Enugu also have contacted us, and we are discussing. As I said earlier, rail infrastructure is not cheap. They have to plan well, and we are joining them in planning, and we are sure in no distant future, the city center will have the rail so that they will link up with the national rail so that the citizens can enjoy the benefit of good rail system. But we have to start. I think the problem we have had before is that the rail infrastructure cannot be put at within 1 year. It has to be started gradually. If it's 100 kilometers we can do at a time, we do that as the way we are going about it now. In no time, if we have started building by the time we did 1999, we're doing, let's say, even 100 kilometers. Well, 20 years times 100 would have been 2,000 kilometers. I say we should exercise patience, and in no distant time, as about the rail policy that all federal capital, industrial base, and potential production center and mineral resources center should be touched by rail so that those products can be moved easily and cheap. You should know that most time the product, when the cost of producing them may be cheap, but cost of moving them to where the customer can get them may be higher than the product, and it's not good for our economy. And I just want to divert a bit. People talk about border closure. I don't know whether the border had been opened. I'm yet to understand clearly. I thought there had been limit and restriction to border, that goods coming in are supposed to be charged. So I think we need education to know. I think we should, whether are we using the correct language by saying border closure. I've been to the Republic of Benin. I know I have to pass through immigration to cross. And if people have been going to bring in cars, and I think they pay custom duty to pass them. So any product you pass, I don't know why we talk about the border is not. I don't think it's closed. People will still pass through and go. But the only thing that government is emphasizing that things must be done rightly, and all necessary things that are supposed to be done should be done. Thank you.
Okay, back in Abuja, we can't complete this discussion without touching on the agricultural value chain in Nigeria. And quickly, there's a very interesting paragraph in Mr. President's letter. He said, for the first time in a generation, our food plates have not all been filled with imports of products we know can easily be produced here at home. The revolution in agriculture is already a reality in all corners of the country. New agreements with Morocco, Russia, and others will help us access on attractive terms the inputs we need to accelerate the transformation in farming that is taking place. That's to you. And Yusuf Ndagi says border closure may be counterproductive to the African Continental Free Trade Area. A more effective and sustainable measure should be put in place. Thanks. How do you tie the two?
Okay, let's look at the president's speech. It's a fact, it's factual to say that there's been some shift in our consumption, and part of which was driven by economic exigencies. Take, for instance, if you look at the last report by the Bureau of Statistics on inflation, they said the increase in inflation was principally driven by food inflation, which was as a result of shift from cereals to consumption of tubers like yam, potato and what have you. And what has happened is that the price of rice, which is the major cereal that Nigerians consume, has shot up beyond the income of an average consumer. So you realize that minimum wage is still 18,000, a bag of rice more than 25,000 naira. So an average family cannot afford to buy a bag of rice.
So minimum wage has increased?
Well, in implementation has not.
It has started?
At the federal level.
Both the last month and
Kano State said it will start this January. Okay, but the basic thing is this. So what has happened is that people have shifted their consumption from those food items they can no longer afford to other food items that are grown locally. And I've also seen an uptick in the price of those locally produced food like tubers, cocoa, potato, and what have you. So clearly, economic exigencies have compelled Nigerian families to adjust their palate, to adjust their consumption pattern. So that's a reality. Then it's also factual to say that there has been some increase in production of food items locally. The basic thing is that I personally support what you may call food security, because even with the best military, you can't fight a sustained war, a standard aggressor, if you cannot feed yourself. So it is a critical thing that you have food security. Countries eat what they produce, because part of the food you eat is cultural. It is the food you are grown up, you were trained while you were growing up, that becomes your favorite food. So that is taken for granted. But on the issue of border closure, I maintain the fact that the border closure should have been more systematic in the sense that it should not be an ad hoc, it should be programmed phase development, and it must be supported by the appropriate policy that will ensure we compensate in production of those goods that are coming through the land borders.
Okay, before I go to the generals here, let me take you on this before we forget. What's your take on power generation regarding Mr. President's letter before we go to
the president said one, we're strengthening that we've signed an agreement with Siemens, which will strengthen our generation, distribution, and transmission. Part of the problems we have is that the power sector reform has failed to achieve what they call commercial viability. And that commercial viability means that the distribution company, which are the last mile of the value chain, are not able to generate enough revenue from selling power to consumers so as to earn enough income to pay for power generation. And because the power generation companies are not getting enough payment for their power generated, they are not able to pay the gas producers. So you find out that in the entire value chain, the value chain collapses, because as long as you are not earning enough from distribution to pay for generation, and generators cannot earn enough to pay the gas suppliers are uninterested in supplying, the generation companies are unable to fire their turbines, and therefore the power distribution companies are either not even willing to accept more power supply because they are in arrears of payment. But what has happened is the government has done a couple of things. They've come up with a new tariff. In as much as the new tariff will hurt us temporarily, but it should lead to the sector achieving commercial viability. And once you achieve commercial viability, you will see a ratcheting up of generation. And the distribution company will also have enough resources to invest in strengthening their distribution grids to reduce their average collection and distribution losses. So the key thing is that the government has come up with the appropriate policies. They have been subsidizing the power sector, which is not sustainable. Now the consumers have to pay for power generation.
Okay, let me hold you there because of time. I have to take them here. Now, they say reserve the best for the last. There is a question I believe people will be expecting to hear me ask, and let me ask that question. Some will say they have degraded, but we still hear pockets of attacks. Can you explain this in simplistic terms so that people understand what all this means before we go?
Thank you very much, and I appreciate those skeptics for their skeptical positions. But when we look at the larger picture, I think even the skeptics will congratulate themselves that they are still within the territorial space of Nigeria. If the government was not able to do what it had done to be able to hit these people very, very hard, I think it would have been a different story today. Fighting terrorism and insurgency is not the same as fighting another country, which you have a red line, you have a blue line, and all those sort of things. And in all the countries of the world where this type of terrorism and insurgency has held sway, there has been no situation where terrorism is defeated and completely is taken off the space like that. Even Sri Lanka that enjoyed some years, we saw what happened during Easter last year. Over 500 people killed in one fell swoop in a church and countless number wounded. So that's just an example. When we look at Afghanistan, look at Pakistan, look at Iraq, look at Libya, look at all over the places where we have these challenges. Even with the backing of the superpowers of this world, those things are still festering in those places. But here, Nigerians should congratulate themselves and congratulate the government of this country for being able, first of all, to contain. As of 2013, 2012, 13, and 14, even in this Abuja, people could not claim to be sleeping with their two eyes closed, even with one eye closed, to the extent that even the police headquarters was bombed. The UN headquarters was bombed. Even a barrack inside Abuja here was bombed. 2014, how many people were murdered by bombs in Nyanya? As close as that. But people have forgotten. Now 2015 upward, we have seen the enormous job that the government has done through the armed forces and all the security agencies that have done so well to make sure things are returning to normalcy. Maiduguri, as at 2014-2015, almost every day bomb goes off. Inside Maiduguri, inside market, inside mosque, inside church. We had here in one of the clips that before, you can't even go and pray in the mosque. You can't go to church. You go to Maiduguri city today. Maiduguri is now a city that it used to be. At the peak period, you experience traffic gridlock the same way you experience it at the peak time in Lagos. If nothing had been done, if the government has not achieved, I don't think that will be there. That's why I say it will be better if Nigerians have the patience and the mind to look at the larger picture. The government has laid down way through all its institutions that are supposed to be handling that aspect of insecurity in Nigeria.
Okay.
We are not yet completely there, but the government, the armed forces, and other security agencies have done so marvelously to contain and make sure things are being handled the way they should.
Okay. We opened up with a generic impression of Mr. President's letter. Now we are about to tie up the program. We know too well that your name is a recurring dismal every other day on the media regarding mileages covered, specific to the Nigerian Air Force. What word of reassurance are you giving us as we tie up?
Well, just a follow-up, first of all, to what General Adeosun said. Nobody can argue with the fact that there has been tremendous progress made from 2015 till now. The situation, if you compare the two, are miles apart. But we are fighting an asymmetric warfare, and the challenges of confronting an asymmetric threat, and it's a global threat, which is global terrorism. So certain things that may, for instance, the defeat of ISIS in Syria and Iraq would have implications here. Instability in the Maghreb would also have certain implications here. So as much as has been achieved from 2015, the recovery of all the local governments that, as mentioned during one of those reports, have, come back. Normalcy returned to several areas. Maiduguri, I returned from Maiduguri yesterday. So that is the nature of the asymmetric threat. But if we look at where we are coming from to where we are now, we'll have every cause to say, yes, the government has done its utmost best, the armed forces has done its best. For the Nigerian Air Force, we said it's a sub-conventional and asymmetric threat. And so from 2015 to now, the Nigerian Air Force itself has restructured in order to meet this asymmetric threat, establish a new Special Operations Command with quick response groups, train Special Forces personnel, regiment personnel, to be able to meet with the threat, because we have to protect our assets before we can project air power, use our air assets to go and attack locations. If you can remember, even in 2013, in December, the Nigerian Air Force base in Maiduguri was also attacked, and we lost some air assets. As a result of that, there was that move to build our capacity to protect our own assets. And that was when the force protection in complex air-ground environment was entered into a partnership with the Royal Air Force through the British Military Advisory Training Team to train our own regiment personnel. Over 3,600 of them have been trained, and they're operating in different theaters, but especially in the Lafia Dole theater. Okay, so that is just to protect. But for air power projection, the Nigerian Air Force has continued to conduct airstrikes in those areas, because they've been curtailed to those areas in the northern fringes of the Lake Chad and some parts of Sambisa. So the airstrikes are conducted to degrade their capability, their fighting capability, to unbalance the center of gravity, to ensure that they are denied freedom of action, so that they will not be able to come out and attack locations. Yes, there have been attacks on certain soft targets, but essentially, as these operations continue, as Mr. President's commitment begins to yield greater fruition in terms of the additional air assets, like I said, these 12 Super Tucano are coming in, additional helicopters are coming in, the GF-17 Thunder are also coming in. When those ones come in, the number of pilots that we have in terms of pilot to aircraft ratio is what will ensure that any remaining elements of the remnants of these terrorists will be taken out and give room for, like you said, winning the peace to take place in all the areas that are affected.
Okay. Before I take Johnson Chukwu, let me go to Lagos and take on the MD of Nigeria Railway Corporation. In conclusion, as much as Mr. President's letter to Nigeria is robust, we can't exhaust it within 2 hours, but in your concluding thoughts, you had said if what is on ground is sustained, there's hope for 2020. What's your concluding thoughts?
And let's join hands together and move forward and look for better days ahead. And we should all join hands and support the government, because this infrastructure they are putting in place, they are not putting in place, the president is not putting in place because he wants to come and join the train. It's putting in place because of the people of Nigerians. And it will outlive us, and the generation yet unborn will benefit from all this infrastructure there, because they are lasting projects that can stand the test of time. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, right. It was not having on the program.
I wish you well.
Let me take on you now. In conclusion, can we speak to Nigerians? What kind of attitudes should Nigerians exhibit, given the fact that conventional will normally have a broadcast on New Year Day, but this time around a letter by Mr. President to Nigerians, reeling out what will be done, the mileages covered, and even came up with a long list of projects that will be achieved within the year. What attitude should Nigerians put up as we tie up?
My approach is that Nigerians should give the president the benefit of the doubt. The president has come up with what we call measurable milestones or specific targets, and this can form the key performance indicators that we will use to assess him at the end of the year. So we should give him the benefit of the doubt and hope that at the end of the year, we will have to compare the performance of the government in 2020 with the specific that the president has given us. I believe by that time, we should be in a position to lead the president.
Well, I still want to ask you this. You can't rule out opposition in a democracy, but there's what we call virile opposition and opposition that is not virile. what kind of opposition should we sustain? As much as we see all this, you still have people say, no, it's not working, it's working. So what kind of opposition should we see? Because we're in a democracy.
Yes, the kind of opposition I expect we should have in the country is what we have in other countries. And that's where the opposition will have a shadow cabinet. And the shadow cabinet will have people who are responsible for reviewing each aspect of government policies and coming up with alternatives where there are alternatives. The basic thing that criticism should not be based on the need to criticize. It should be what you call constructive criticism is that every critic should have a commensurate superior opinion of how things should be done better. Okay. In the absence of such alternative suggestion, it becomes divisive, it becomes unhelpful. So I think the opposition should evolve, should take on the government on their policies, and must come up with a recommendation that will either strengthen the position of the government or will give the government alternatives on how to improve the lives of Nigerians.
Okay, quickly. Last word before we go, then we'll turn the program. Because when you're sick and you don't see a doctor, it looks as if there's no hope. But by the time you see a doctor, even say, hello, General Adeosun, you start getting well. So when Nigerians hear from you, maybe some reassurance will have been dropped in their spirits.
Well, from the security side of Mr. President's speech and the letter to the nation, and also will contain specific guidance and directive to all sectors for security and for Nigerian Army, which I know is the same with the other members of the armed forces. Nigerians should expect a better time in terms of security, not only because of what we're doing now, because of so many other things. Like this Mr. President's speech has also given impetus to the Chief of Army Staff in particular to also issue his own strategic directive for the year 2020, which is the binding and the guideline for all our activities, both operationally, administratively, and all what have you, which is geared towards proactive handling of security issues. In terms of insurgency and terrorism, Nigeria Army has remained the lead service, which is ably supported by the Nigerian Air Force with all its assets and operations. Okay. And other security agencies too. We have the police now, the mobile part of the mobile police units are also deployed supporting the areas where the military had fully liberated, to also allow the military to do some other, to do more in some other areas. So in the year 2020, Nigeria should expect more from the Nigerian Army in particular and from the armed forces generally in providing enabling environment as contained in Mr. President's letter to all Nigerians that yes, we are in for a better time.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I must say, I believe by the time we come back, Johnson would have been telling us the milestones covered by the private sector. Well, right now, let me say thanks so much to Johnson Chukwu, economist and financial expert. It was nice having you on the program.
My pleasure.
Enjoy your thoughts. And Air Commodore Ibukunle Daramola, thank you so much. And Lieutenant General Lamidi Adeosun. It was nice having you on the program.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we looked at sectoral projections of Mr. President's letter to Nigerians. Huge, robust, but very hopeful. Thanks for watching. On behalf of all of us, always make time to be with Tuesday Live. Bye-bye.